They thought she was just another quiet woman in a park, but beneath her gray hoodie was a black belt and 20 years of calm, disciplined strength. They chose the wrong person to push around. The dew still clung to the grass at Cedar Heights Park, shimmering under the early morning light. Birds chirped overhead, and the distant hum of sprinklers whispered a rhythm familiar to anyone who called this quiet suburb home. Joggers passed. Dog leashes clicked. The smell of wet earth and blooming trees hung in the air. And as she had done, for years Angela Foster arrived without fanfare. Her hoodie was the same soft gray she always wore. Her mat, rolled under one arm, looked plain, ordinary. Her steps made no sound. To the early risers of Cedar Heights, Angela was the same as always, the pleasant librarian from the community branch on Maple Street. The woman who remembered your kids' names, who recommended the perfect mystery novel, who always knew when a kind word was needed. She nodded to the elderly couple walking their Yorkie, waved at the man with the red thermos who ran the same loop every morning. They all knew her, or thought they did. Because what they didn't see, what Angela never spoke of, was what lived in the quiet space between her movements. Karate wasn't a hobby for Angela. It wasn't a talking point at parties or a weekend class at the Y. It was her foundation, her compass, her code. She had trained for 2 decades under Sensei Yamamoto, a man of few words and deep wisdom. He taught her that strength wasn't in the fists, it was in restraint. In knowing yourself so well, no one else's chaos could reach you. Angela settled onto the grass in her usual spot, a quiet patch beneath the open sky, no trees overhead, just light, space, and breath. She closed her eyes and inhaled. This was her ritual, her centering, her silent armor for the day ahead, but peace doesn't last forever. Footsteps, heavy, uneven, loud enough to break the rhythm of morning. Angela opened her eyes, not startled, just aware. 2 men. Strangers. Out of place. They weren't part of the usual scene. No dogs, no running shoes. Just swagger, noise, and eyes that scanned like they owned the place. They walked like they were looking for something. Or someone. Angela didn't move. She kept breathing. Still. Present. Grounded. She knew the signs. She'd seen this before. Posturing, probing, picking someone they assumed wouldn't push back. And that was their first mistake. Because Angela Foster may have looked like a gentle librarian. But she was far more than that. She was ready. Always. Ready? And that morning, the park would learn a lesson it wouldn't forget. Not because Angela raised her voice, not because she wanted a fight, but because she refused to be moved. Trouble didn't always come with warning signs. Sometimes it showed up in broad daylight, in the middle of a peaceful park, wearing cheap cologne and carrying a bad attitude. That morning, it came in the form of Derek and Cameron. Angela didn't recognize them, but she recognized the type. Loud, puffed up, unused to being challenged, the kind of men who mistook kindness for weakness. They walked toward her with the casual arrogance of those used to getting their way, not through respect, but through volume and size. Derek spoke first. "You're in our spot." Angela looked up calmly. "I've been coming here for years," she said evenly, her voice soft but grounded. "There's plenty of space in the park. You're welcome to find another spot, or wait. I won't be long," Cameron snorted. "Did you hear that? She thinks she gets to decide where we sit." Their laughter was loud, forced, meant to provoke, but Angela didn't flinch. She didn't rise. She simply returned to her breath, to her stillness. Years of discipline had taught her that silence, when held with confidence, is often louder than noise, but bullies aren't used to silence. Derek stepped closer, the soles of his boots crunching over the dew-soaked grass. He glanced around, not out of caution, but to make sure people were watching. That there'd be an audience for the show he thought he was about to put on. Angela saw the flicker of performance in his eyes. Cameron followed behind, his smirk more nervous than confident. "You really think this is your park?" he sneered. "Look around. You're alone. No one's going to stop us." Angela didn't break eye contact. "I'm not asking you to leave," she said. "I'm asking you to respect that I was here first. That's all." Derek chuckled. "Respect?" He looked to Cameron. "You hear that?" She wants respect. He stepped forward again, this time planting his foot directly on the corner of her mat. The crowd was starting to notice. A jogger slowed down. An elderly couple by the bench paused mid-conversation. Phones didn't come out yet, but eyes were definitely watching. Angela didn't move. "Please," she said calmly, "don't touch my things." Derek ignored her. He ground his heel into the mat, slow and deliberate. Then Cameron leaned in. "You got two choices, lady. Move or we move you." Angela breathed in once. Deep, steady. She wasn't afraid. Not of them. Not of this moment. But she was aware this was the turning point. The edge between reason and reaction. She stood. Not suddenly, not dramatically. Just a smooth, practiced motion that brought her to her feet like rising water, and even then, she said it once more. "I don't want trouble, but I won't be bullied." Derek grinned. "Oh, yeah?" And with one quick jerk, he grabbed the edge of her mat and pulled hard. The mat slipped. Angela didn't. She adjusted instantly, weight balanced, posture perfect, and though her voice remained calm, her eyes sharpened. "That's your final warning," she said quietly. "Let go. Walk away, now." But Derek and Cameron weren't listening. They never had. And they were about to learn the difference between a woman who looked small and a woman who was unshakable. It only took one touch to change everything. Derek reached out, faster than he had before, and clamped, his hand around Angela's wrist. To him, it was a show of dominance. To Angela, it was a choice, and he made the wrong one. "Let go of my arm," she said, voice steady as bedrock. He sneered, tightening his grip. "Make me." She did. With a swift, deliberate motion, Angela broke the hold. No flailing, no theatrics. Just precision. The kind that only comes from 20 years of discipline. Derek stumbled back in shock, blinking as if someone had hit a reset button in his brain. "What the—" But she didn't answer. Her body already knew what to do. Her stance shifted subtly, one foot behind the other, weight balanced, hands relaxed but ready. A stance no one in that park recognized, except perhaps instinctively, the growing crowd now watching. The woman they thought was a quiet librarian had just peeled the mask away. Cameron lunged next. He didn't throw a punch. He threw a slap, meant to humiliate, not harm. Angela sidestepped the strike with almost poetic grace. Her hand lifted, redirected his arm effortlessly, using his momentum against him. It wasn't a block. It was a lesson. He stumbled past her, off balance and angry. Still, she gave them a final out. "This is your last chance to walk away," she said, turning slightly so she could see them both. Her voice was clear, not loud, but it carried. Everyone heard it. Someone in the crowd whispered, "She's trained." Phones were now out, recording. Another voice, firmer, said, "I'm calling the police." But the bullies weren't listening. Pride makes people deaf. Derek's face twisted with rage. "You think this is a game?" Cameron gave a nod. They charged. Together. 2 men, 1 woman. But not just any woman. Angela Foster was still, not from fear, from focus. She waited, and then moved. Derek's lunge was sloppy, wild with frustration. She let him pass, guided his shoulder with a well-placed palm, and used his own momentum to send him tumbling to the ground. Again. Cameron followed a split second later, reaching to grab her. She turned, dropped her weight, and flipped him over, her hip with devastating control. Both men hit the ground with a thud that echoed louder than any insult they'd thrown. The crowd gasped. Then, applause. Small at first, then building. Phones captured every second. Angela remained centered, breathing steady. She hadn't thrown a punch, hadn't lashed out. She had simply done what she needed to, no more, no less. For the first time, the bullies weren't talking, and the quiet woman in the gray hoodie, she wasn't backing down. Not now. Not ever. They came at her like a storm, fists clenched, pride on the line, blind with fury. But Angela Foster didn't move with fear. She moved with mastery. Derek lunged again, his movements uncoordinated and frantic. Angela pivoted, graceful, measured. One arm blocked, the other redirected. His momentum did the rest. He hit the ground hard, flat on his back, the breath knocked from his lungs in a heavy gasp. The same man who barked orders just moments before now lay staring up at the sky, bewildered. Cameron charged next. Sloppy, predictable. Angela turned, dropped low, and with a perfect hip toss, sent him flying. His body flipped through the air and landed in a heap beside his friend. Textbook, clean, controlled, the kind of throw that took years to master, the kind of control that took decades. Silence. Then, a voice from the crowd. Oh my God, did she just... But Angela didn't bask in the reaction. She stood calmly, shoulders steady, hands open but ready, her breathing even, not aggressive, just prepared. She looked at the crowd. Then at the two men scrambling on the grass. I am a third-degree black belt in karate, she said. Not boasting, just stating a truth. I didn't want this fight, but I will defend myself. It landed like a bell in the park, clear, sharp, undeniable. And then the applause came. Not polite, not hesitant, genuine, because they had all seen it. Skill, restraint, and strength. True strength. Derek and Cameron staggered to their feet, bruised in body and in ego. They didn't speak. There was nothing left to say. They hadn't just lost a fight, they had been outmatched by someone they thought they could break, and now they had to walk past the eyes of every stranger who'd just seen what real power looked like. Angela didn't watch them leave. She simply stepped aside, picked up her mat, and exhaled, long, slow, and centered, just another morning in the park. But one no one would ever forget. By the time the police arrived, the story had already spread like a ripple through still water. 2 men detained, dozens of witnesses, multiple videos. One clear truth: Angela Foster had defended herself, and done so with flawless control. Derek and Cameron were cuffed without resistance, their bravado gone. Charged with harassment and attempted assault, their records now reflected what the community had long whispered about their behavior. This time, there was no escape from accountability, not with half the neighborhood watching, not with the footage, playing on phones all around. As the officers took statements, one woman leaned toward Angela and whispered, I thought you were just the librarian. Angela smiled gently. I am. The following days were filled with quiet buzz, not gossip, reverence. Neighbors who'd passed Angela in silence for years now greeted her with nods, small smiles, a new kind of respect. The library saw more visitors. Children asked if she was the real-life ninja, and more than one parent quietly inquired about self-defense classes for their daughters. But Angela didn't change. She returned to the park at sunrise. Gray hoodie, yoga pants, mat under one arm, still centered and serene. She didn't want to be a symbol. She didn't need to be a hero. She was simply honoring her training, her peace, her space, and somewhere in the stillness, she heard Sensei Yamamoto's voice again. True strength, he had said, isn't loud. It doesn't shout. It doesn't seek attention. It simply stands, unshaken. Angela stood. And because she did, others began to as well. Sometimes the most powerful thing in the world isn't force, but stillness, and the calm of someone who knows exactly who they are. Angela Foster didn't wear a cape. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't strike first, but when faced with confrontation, she stood her ground, not with anger but with unwavering calm. She didn't want to fight. She wanted peace. But she was prepared for both. Her strength wasn't just in her black belt. It was in her patience, her presence, her principle. In a world where noise is often mistaken for power, Angela reminded us that true strength is measured not in volume, but in composure, in courage wrapped in restraint, in the quiet dignity of someone who refuses to be moved by fear or force. She was just a librarian, just a woman in the park, just the strongest person there. Have you ever been underestimated? Because you didn't fit the part? Because you chose calm over chaos? Angela's story proves one thing. Real power doesn't posture. It doesn't need to shout. It stands, steady and still. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder of their quiet strength. Subscribe for more true stories of resilience, courage, and unexpected heroes, and let us know in the comments, where are you watching from today? Until next time, stay strong, stay grounded, and never mistake silence for weakness.